Welcome to the Reel Rematch, the podcast where we unpack Hollywood's twin films, sometimes cloned on purpose, sometimes by accident, but always in competition. Today's matchup, Churchill Face Off, Dunkirk versus Darkest Hour, two films with strikingly similar plots released just over 4 months apart. Which one triumphed at the box office, which one endured in memory, and which film best captured the historic moment? Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Justin. How you going, mate?
Mate, I'm going well. Bit cold here in Melbourne. Looking forward to this next pod. What an amazing year. Back-to-back Churchill films.
It was really interesting. I have to say that I had not seen these two prior to this, so it was really interesting to come into this fresh, not revisiting either of them and seeing them from completely fresh eyes. And I have to say I was astounded by both films. Thoroughly enjoyed both films. So, yeah.
So we're obviously talking about Dunkirk and The Darkest Hour, or Darkest Hour. Both came out in 2017 and both about the evacuation of Dunkirk, but from completely different perspectives. So I had seen both films prior and my memories were fond of both, but I certainly had a strong preference, at least memory-wise, for Dunkirk. But then after watching both, it's still absolutely Dunkirk, but I was blown away by Darkest Hour. And Gary Oldman gives an absolute tour de force and has been one of my favourite actors for a very long time. Can we talk about Oldman just for a little bit?
Well, if you're talking about these two films and probably the strongest character of them all, not denigrating anybody else, you have to talk about Oldman. Absolutely.
So, I've always loved Gary Oldman. Obviously I was coming of age in the 90s or otherwise, so that really influenced a lot of my sensibilities and tastes. And, seeing him in, again, no particular order, but Francis Ford Coppola's, Bram Stoker's Dracula, right, where he's playing Dracula. It's like an amazing performance. He plays the small role of, the drug dealer in True Romance, which I think is an absolute lit.
I love that. Love that performance.
Scene-stealing performance.
Absolutely.
Just incredible how he transforms. I also absolutely loved him in Leon, or The Professional, where he plays the sociopathic, police thief. And I also loved him as the crazy villain in The Fifth Element. I could go on and on about, I loved him in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I love him in Slow Horses. You go back, yes, I did love him as Sid Vicious and in Sid and Nancy and so on. So much of his oeuvre or kind of, body of work is punctuated by sheer brilliance. Even his turn as Commissioner Gordon in Nolan's sort of my Batman series, for the first time I really cared about the Commissioner Gordon character. He had this humanity and vulnerability and Gary Oldman, and you see it in this performance, I can only imagine probably amongst his peers, he's probably thought of as an actor's actor. He's truly brilliant. Iridescent in terms of how brilliant he is.
Yes, absolutely. I cannot disagree with anything you've just said. Again, all the way back from earliest roles up until now through to Slow Horses, which he's currently in the process of doing. He shines in everything he does. Right? You can't think of, his legacy for everything he's done is just amazing. And he's iridescent. And in this film, for me, I guess I'd seen the trailer or however many, I always keep track of trailers and I'm interested. I'm not sure will I get to that film or not. And particularly with this, I was expecting The Darkest Hour to be like this very British, very dark panel wood, Houses of Parliament, men in corners, talking heads kind of film. And it wasn't that at all, right? And from the very get-go, Oldman is just, electric as Churchill. Absolutely electric. So, yeah, it was, he won the Oscar for this for a reason. Spoiler alert. But, yeah, because he was just outstanding in this role. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, let's not, sort of downplay the sheer brilliance of Dunkirk as well. Pulse pounding, seat of your pants, riveting, sort of like three sort of like disparate stories intertwining, a little bit of playing around with, time and space and perspective that Nolan sort of like frequently revisits in I think pretty much all of his films. And I mean, heart pounding, pulsing, just incredible. I mean, like from the get-go, right, where you have the half a dozen sort of like young, mainly I think the English soldiers, going down the streets of Dunkirk. It's eerily silent, and then gunfire breaks out.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's on, right? And the movie doesn't stop. It's just relentless. I think that would be my one word if I had to capture the spirit of what makes Dunkirk the amazing film that is, it's relentless, but in a good way.
But I agree. And that was, again, I wasn't knowing what to expect on this, but it was literally 100 minutes on the edge of my seat, just tense, like you said, relentless. Not pressure's not the word, but you know what I mean. It's like you just feel like, come on, we've got to get these guys off the beach without even being on the beach at the very beginning. Like, as you said, those eerily quiet streets, the way it starts, the way the gunfire just kicks off. And from then you're like, come on, can we get out of this position? Can we get out of this position? And every single scene is, how do we get out of this position? Even the guys on the boat coming to rescue the guys at Dunkirk, there's just a relentless tenseness to their travels as well. It's just, it was amazing. So
look, maybe let's do a bit of a recap. Do you want to hit us up with the facts and figures, Jeff, in terms
of
man.
Absolutely.
How it was received when both films came out?
Well, in terms of, all right, so these films came out about 6 months apart. Dunkirk was a big summer blockbuster, July of 2017, opened wide as most Nolan films do, in 3,000 plus screens. Darkest Hour came later in the year. It actually premiered at Telluride in September that year, and then opened in a limited release in November before going wide just prior to Christmas of 2017. So there was a 6-month gap between them. In terms of business, they both did exceptional business considering. Dunkirk opened at 50 mil, opening weekend. Went on to take 190 mil domestically in the US, and then another 320 million worldwide. So its total worldwide gross was 510. With a budget of 150, it returned 3.5 times for the studio, which is always good, and they know that Nolan usually delivers. Again, Darkest Hour opened on a limited release, so it's a bit skewed on its opening weekend, only 175,000, but that's only on 4 screens. But when it went wide in December, pulled in good numbers, 56.5 on its domestic run. Internationally, it did another 100, nearly $95 to $100 million, of which about a third of that, 33, just came from the UK, which is understandable given the content and the nature of what the film's about. So it took 150 mil, but again, sharper budget of $30 million, so it did very, very well. Both films are very widely praised, obviously, being Oscar winners and the roles and everything. Dunkirk sits at 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, has a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 94 on Metacritic. Darkest Hour, a little bit softer, but 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb and a 74 on Metacritic. So, and audiences love them as well. So they're on 80% plus each on the popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes. So these are very well-respected, not just critical, but audience films.
And, it's incredible just listening to you sort of run that down, Jeff, is that, you really can't separate the two films, to be honest. Like, be it, critically, commercially, they both did sort of 5x their budget. The numbers are pretty much the same. Audience-wise, they're about the same. So, why did these two films, as we always say, why did they come out in 2017? I've got an opening salvo. Okay. Unless you want to go first.
No, you take the lead here.
So, I guess, let's think about sort of the two films. Obviously, Darkest Hour for mine, right, was, a smaller prestige movie really meant to showcase the talents of Gary Oldman and probably give him a long overdue or deserved Oscar, right, which he ultimately got. And up in the pantheon of exceptionally worthy winners, there's no dispute that he was, turned in the best performance of that year.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is like, this big budget, epic, heart-pounding sort of action film by probably the hottest director in the world, right?
Yes.
In terms of Christopher Nolan, just coming off the Batman movies and otherwise. So, it was actually like post-Brexit, right? And this kind of Trump-era political climate where, notions of statesmanship or, statehood and rallying around, in a unified manner under a collective cause and, really having ideals and hopes really at the forefront of your thinking and maybe in the back of your mind for the actions that you're taking. And certainly, what was driving a lot of, the best versions of yourself in terms of thinking and otherwise.
Okay.
So, for me, there was this political climate, across Western democracies where, the leadership was under pressure. The British national identity was getting really massively challenged.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then the concept of standing firm in the face of overwhelming odds, right? Obviously, it was particularly resonant in the UK, but also globally as well. And I think that both films really tapped into that zeitgeist. Darkest Hours, obviously, is a reminder of statesmanship and rhetoric. Like, this is, England at its best self,
yes,
at its most resilient, right? As the most unified, it's been under tremendous adversity and pressure. And, Dunkirk really more of a meditation on resilience and sacrifice, right? Just amazing qualities. Obviously there was further focus on survival rather than heroism, I think, in Dunkirk. So it didn't glorify the war in any way, shape or form, and teased out, obviously the anxiety and tension, as I said, that I think was being felt across, the populace of, the UK and also, and also the United States around that time. So, the fact they were both released in sort of 2017 as these things had been in train, I don't know how much is in there, but I think there's something in there.
Well, in looking up so what I found was that Nolan actually had the idea for Dunkirk in the 90s originally.
Right.
And he actually got because he was traveling to France with his wife, and one of the boat trips they took was similar to the way the boats traveled to Dunkirk. And that was brought to their attention on, probably the loudspeaker. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, how the tour guides do this kind of thing. But part of it was that he put it on hold when he had the idea. Is obviously one of those, he put it in the ideas drawer ready to go, but he realized he couldn't fulfill the action that he had in mind when he wanted to do that, right? At the time, because he wasn't where he was in 2017 in terms of his knowledge, let's say, and his skill as a director, let's say. So he realized what his limitations were. So, and he actually originally conceived it to be fully improvised. He wasn't actually going to script it. He was going to fully improvise the whole thing with a sort of core structure. But I guess if you think about integrating, say, both of those kind of theories, one's not a theory, that's just what I've researched, was that you're right. Maybe when he's talking about what do I want to do, he's understanding the political climate at the same time and realizing, okay, well, this is prescient for this time of this kind of, time that we're in. Do you know what I mean? The world is in turmoil. There's things going on. There's these massive shifts in government. So, he's a British expat, lives in the US, but...
Oh, does he live in the US?
I believe he does, yeah.
I didn't realise.
I believe he does. So, yeah. So, but that's, and again, yeah, The Darkest Hour just came about, was a spec script by the guy who wrote The Theory of Everything. So he'd just been doing some research and sort of came to some information and decided to write this film on Churchill and Darkest Hour and his whole process. So...
just incredible. Let's maybe jump in and sort of chat a little bit about, do you want to do the directors first or do you want to get into the cast?
Oh, well, okay, why don't we do cast first?
So look, let's kick off with Dunkirk.
Yep.
Right? There's probably, maybe some higher highlights, but, as you pointed out, I think Nolan initially intended Dunkirk to be, I think, a wholly ad-lib, sort of non-actors and so on and so forth. And there's still that spirit and the element that really comes through. But my gosh, does it have some pretty incredible performances. I'm just going to start off actually with Kenneth Branagh, right? I've got to admit, I don't think I've loved Kenneth Branagh more in a film than I have this one. And I've been a fan of Kenneth Branagh ever since my dad took me to go see Dead Again, right? Whatever that's worth.
Wow.
Right? That's back in 89 or something.
That's a while away. Yeah.
But I don't know what it was that film, because they had a lot of Hitchcock elements to it. And I was a huge Hitchcock fan, even back then in my younger days. And I just thought it was just an incredible, performance. And this, at the time, he was really a triple threat. He could really, he could act, both on movies and stage. He could direct, and he was really, really good at sort of conceiving and conceptualizing and then bringing to life, be it really, really dead Shakespeare sort of texts or then genre films that came out, and I loved sort of that film. So Kenneth Branagh in this film, he was just amazing, and it was really quite he's had quite an incredible career. But in 2017, and he does this, and he's done this throughout his career, right? He has he goes to the peak of a mountain, right? So he does this, And then he stars and directs in Murder in the Orient Express in the same year. I mean, that's some year, right? I mean, and you know what? That would be some year in like a decade of, creative pursuits or endeavors and otherwise, right? But he's done this multiple times throughout his career. Like he's a bit freaky in that regard. So let me give you another couple of examples where he's done that. So in 2002, he was in Rabbit Proof Fence and Harry Potter and Chamber of Secrets, right? In 2023, he had Oppenheimer and A Haunting in Venice, right? And he had this quite an incredible early run where he was both critically and commercially acclaimed for roughly a decade, a bit longer, kind of like from the 89 to 99 sort of period. So he's just had like these moments where he just comes out, sheer brilliance. I mean, he's an incredible performance, and like his stoicism. I mean, he essays that in a way that, William Zabka essays being a bully in Karate Kid, right? I mean, like his sort of a play on stoicism. It's like, you know what, if you're watching like a living encyclopedia or otherwise, like that's what you get.
I agree. He's the stoic anchor in this film, right? And okay, maybe it's over exaggerating to say it's a bit of a stereotype. He's very much that stoic senior British leader going, we're here, boys. We're trying to get everybody out. We're doing all we can. Let's just get on with the game. Get on with it. All right. I appreciate that 200 meters that way. We can all die in the next 15 minutes, but let's do what we got to do and we'll get out. And right at the end, he's the captain who goes down with his ship. Do you know what I mean? In a sense, he's the last man there. He watches that small boat go off, gets that young kid who runs up at the end. Come on, man. Come on, lad. Let's go. Gets him off. And then he's waiting for the next last ship because that's what his role entailed to do as that commander of the region. And he's just fantastic at it.
100%. And like, Jeff, let me give you two things to only further cement, what you've already laid out very, very clearly. And so he has this one line, and I had to write it down because I went, that is magnificent, and talks about his, utilitarian nature, like, greatest good for the greatest many, right? Is when he says, Colonel, you have to decide how many wounded men you want to take. One stretcher takes the space of 7 standing men. Right. And then at the very end where, he's on that pier that's been, bombed, within an inch of its existence. And someone turns to him and goes, oh, and it could be the colonel. I actually can't remember. Because he comes in and goes, oh, I think I'll wait for the French. And it's like, I mean, to me, he almost wins the film, like from an acting perspective.
Yeah.
He almost wins the film. Like it doesn't have much to do, but like he's like, in cricket parlance, he's like hitting sixes.
Yes.
Right? Or, baseball, he's hitting homers, or, like in basketball, like, he's just put up like, 12 three-pointers, like, like 8 minutes or something.
Oh, he's Steph Curry the whole way through.
Oh, he absolutely crushes it. So let's talk about someone else in Dunkirk who I also think, if it wasn't for Branagh, maybe he would have like stolen it himself, but I love Mark Rylance.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Like, I mean, like it's really interesting capturing him because he's a really like quite an incredible character actor, but like we catch him in this period of time where he was pretty much Steven Spielberg's go-to.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So he was in Bridge of Spies in 2015.
Yep.
He was in the BFG in 2016. He had this in 2017. And then he had Ready Player One in 18.
Yeah.
Right? So he's literally working, if he's not working with the best, arguably the second best, but when Spielberg's like clearly like the best over like, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
The best director I think we'll ever see.
Yes.
But I mean, like, wow. And like his performance in every single sort of like scene and otherwise is, again, he just sort of like brings this gravitas and humanity but also like, again, like he's doing more of a...
But there's that fatherliness to him as well because
exactly.
he's got his son there, the young bloke, but also he's fatherly to Cillian Murphy's character when he loses it and pushes the Brendan, what's his name, into the boat.
Yeah.
Right. But he doesn't lose his mind or get angry or throw him off. He fathers him to make him realise, stop.
Yeah.
Right. There's no need for this. We're all in this position. Let's just get on with it. And then we can all go home.
And again, like, really that common sense, that almost morbidly pragmatic kind of like nature to his character. And he's doing stoicism in more of a kind of like earthly sort of...
Yes.
I don't know, homely or more relatable way, whereas like Kenneth Branagh's like he's doing it in a very iconic, incredible way. It's not overblown or anything like that at all, but it is meant to be, really the aspirational best version of that.
Yeah.
But Rylance, like he's incredible. And let's talk about Cillian Murphy. I mean, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but like, oh my God, like, I don't think I've seen anyone look so, be it sort of a combination of shattered, crestfallen, like, shell of a man, right? Just inhabiting human form, like portrayed in such a short amount of time as well and as believable as Cillian Murphy when he's rescued.
Yeah, and that's actually, and sorry to take away from that for a second, that's just what this film does, is that all these guys show up who are bastions of British film, TV and stage, right? That's exactly what this film is, right? And they may not be in it for very long or very long much, but all of them just smash it out of the park for what they bring to it. Like, I kind of defined Cillian Murphy as his character is waterlogged because they find him in the water, but so is his emotions, his mood, his feeling. He's just dragging himself down, right? It's almost like, they literally pulled a waterlogged man out of the water who felt the same way as he was actually physically being, you know what I mean? Because of everything was dragging him down. And it's particularly when they say, oh, we're going to France instead of the other way, he just sunk deeper. You could almost see the depths of despair drain out of his face. I think
it's a great call, Jeff. Really, really great call. So look, the only two other things I want to quickly hit on is Tom Hardy.
Yep.
Right? So this is really peak Hardy, right?
Yeah.
Because Mad Max in 2015.
Yep.
Legend in 15 as well. Then in 15, sorry, I think he did Mad Max, Legend and The Revenant. In 2017, he did this film, and then he does Venom, which obviously launches a trilogy in 18. I think this is peak Hardy, right? And obviously, it wasn't too much earlier that he was in, obviously, in the third Batman film. But I think this is peak Hardy.
It might, I think for that right period, definitely, yeah.
So, he's incredible. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is, and I did a bit of a double take because I'm not a huge One Direction fan, but when I saw Harry Styles in this, I went, oh, wow. And initially, it didn't click that it was Harry Styles. And I was just thinking, that guy's way too handsome to be a soldier. Right? I was just thinking to myself, this is ridiculous. Like, there's no way knowing that this guy is a soldier back in the 40s, right?
Yeah.
And then I went, oh, shit, it's Harry Styles.
Yeah.
And it was his feature film debut.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, does a great job, right? And, I've seen him in stuff since as well, and it'll be interesting to see if he continues on with his career. I think he's certainly got a bit of acting metal to him, for sure.
Interestingly, the only person that Nolan had to fight for to be in the film was Harry Styles.
That's hilarious.
So he wanted him from the very beginning, because what I found was that when Nolan was interviewing veterans and original, still alive guys who'd been at Dunkirk, he realised that they were all young, inexperienced, just kids who were sent off to war, as most of these people are, right? So he went out and wanted to hire young and inexperienced actors to reflect that. That's why, your older guys in positions of, let's say, more power or, higher up in the military are your Branaghs and those kind of guys, and Tom Hardy is the senior flying guy, right? But all the young kids you see, you might have seen them here and there in a bit of British TV and a couple of films and small parts, but you wouldn't know who they are by looking at them. You could pick their names, right? Like if I asked you to pick the three guys on the beach other than Harry Styles, could you tell me anyone's name?
No, I could not.
Exactly right. And neither could I. Neither could I. And that's because Nolan did that on purpose. That was actually because he wanted that young and inexperienced actor to come out as the young and inexperienced soldier. And again, Harry Styles' feature film debut, wanted him in there. That was the only one the studio pushed back on, but he fought for him because he actually reckoned somewhere I read that it's like, I wanted inexperienced like that, like when I first saw Heath for The Dark Knight.
Right.
Now look what that role turned into. Again, chalk and cheese here. We're not talking the same thing, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He's going, I can see something in Harry the same way I saw something in Heath Ledger. So yeah. And he did it. He did he fit in. He did a reasonable job. He did great with what he needed to be. He wasn't, over the top or, we've all seen pop stars in films and it's like, why the hell are you in this thing? So, yeah.
No, I'm with you. I think, really good job by him as first out of the gate from a feature film perspective. So maybe let's stay on Dunkirk. Let's obviously talk about the man, Christopher Nolan,
yes,
before we jump over to Darkest Hour.
Yes.
I mean, I think he's still in this phase, right, where pretty much everything he's doing is crushing it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think, arguably he had a bit of a stumble with Tenet, right?
Yep.
I don't think I've been controversial, and I'm certainly not.
I don't think you you are either.
Slide into man in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, like, I don't think anyone has a batting average, to use baseball parlance, at 1,000, right? I mean, but he almost did, right? I think up until Tenet. But I mean, like, what a run. He has like Dark Knight Rises in 2012. He has Interstellar in 2014. And then this. Like, you know what? Some people would be happy to have one of those films.
But even his 4 films prior to this, going backwards, were Interstellar, Dark Knight Rises, Inception, and The Dark Knight. They were the 4 films he did prior to this.
Right. And then of course, you've got The Prestige, and then Batman Begins, and then before that, like Memento, and then his first film, The Fallen, which I actually love. Yeah. I mean, like, as I said, he hasn't literally put a foot wrong, I think, up until Kenneth, which I thought was a bit of a misstep to him, vis-a-vis how great he's been. Yeah. Sort of over the journey. Let's do Darkest Hour. Okay. So, obviously, look, I think we've regaled a fair bit about Gary Oldman. Yes. You know, I mean, let's talk about who else is in here, right? There's not much, because it's pretty much the Gary Oldman show. It is. However, Kristen Scott Thomas. I always love seeing her. I think she always brings it. My favourite roles of hers, Roman Polanski's Bitter Moon from 92. Oh, wow. It's going back. 4 Weddings and a Funeral in 94. Yes. Right? Mission Impossible with Cruise in 96. So she's one of those rare leading ladies who actually has got, chemistry with... Oh, my God, I forgot about Tom Cruise. Yeah. Yes, that's right. And The English Patient, same year in 1996. Yeah. And then Nowhere Boy in 2009. I mean, I think she's a super impressive actor. I love seeing her roles. Every time I see her, I know that, I'm most likely to get quality, because I think she's got really good taste. Yeah. She's got a great agent, or a combination of both, but she always seems to be in really interesting films. It does, it gives a really great job. Oh, she's always outstanding in whatever she does, right? And it's good because she holds her own in this film. Like, as you said, it's the Gary Oldman show, absolutely. But, in terms of a parallel to him as the wife who's like, pulls him in line when he needs to be pulled in line, she fully brings it to the table. And let's talk about someone else who I also think holds it with Gary Oldman sort of quite well. Obviously, earlier in her career is Lily James. Yeah. I mean, she was obviously in Downton Abbey from, 2012 to 2015. She's in Baby Driver in 2017. I love Baby Driver, and we should talk about that some other time. Find a pairing. And she's always churning out solid to great performances right up until now. The last film I saw of hers was Iron Claw in 23 with Zac Efron. She's incredible in that. I think she played Pam, as a girlfriend. Like, she's awesome. I think she does a great job, obviously, as the EA, the secretary to Churchill. Great job. And then, of course, let's talk about the Australian connection in this one. Our boy, Ben Mendelsohn. What a run he's on at this period of his career. Like, he's crushing it, absolutely crushing it. He does Mississippi Grind with Ryan Reynolds in 2015, Rogue One in 2016. Like, just think about that, right? He does that Netflix series. Oh, it's like kind of like Shot in the Caribbean somewhere. Name escapes me at the moment. Ran 2015 to 2017. Oh. Ran for 3 series. Gosh, I can't remember, but I know the one you're talking about. Yes. Name escapes me at the moment. Then, of course, he was a bad guy again. He's kind of like going through his bad guy phase. He was a bad guy again in 2018. And then he was, the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, same year. And then he pops up in Captain Marvel in 2019 as Talos. Like, what a run. Yeah. What a run. Yeah. And I know I'll probably jump in ahead a little bit, but I think it would be remiss of us not to sort of comment on this. But apparently he was cast in this film because he looked much like the character or the king that he was playing. I did not know that. By physically and otherwise. So, I mean, it's not like I know because, passed away before we were born. But. Well, I do like him in this. I think he plays the king very well. He's got the speech impediment, which obviously from the King's Speech has been covered off in a previous film. That was the Colin Firth one? That's the Colin Firth one, which is the same time period. Again, it roughly came out in the same... Come out? No, that came out a few years ago, but I mean, it's based in the same time. Because obviously they wanted the king to get on to the thing. I think he is really... And that's what's actually I really like about this is that sort of view of British politics at the time and, how everything plays out. Like Churchill gets up there, gives his all in terms of everything, but it's all about does Neville Chamberlain put his handkerchief in his pocket or not, whether they support Churchill. It's
thoroughly amazing how they do that. But yeah, Mendelsohn in this is great as the king. And actually, my favourite scene in the film is the scene when Mendelsohn as the king comes to Churchill in his house when he's having his massive crisis of faith. He's not sure because he's got absolutely no support. And it's when the king turns and the king's like, he realises he doesn't want to support the rest of the government. He realises what will happen if they go down the route of trying to negotiate for peace. He needs to stick up for his country. And they have that conversation, just two men, bare bones, sitting down, laying it on the table going, you're right, we need to do this. It's actually my favourite scene in the film. Like everyone goes on about the scene where he gets on the tube on the underground and he meets everything. It's great, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that was my favourite scene.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so spoiler, sorry, I'm one of those people who love that tube scene.
It's a great scene, don't get me wrong. It is fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's stirring, it's heartwarming. It's like, it's showing people, being their best selves. And I think that, the hope, the resilience, and kind of like the strength and unity shown by, a nation's populace under immense duress is kind of like captured so perfectly in that film.
Yeah.
And not done in a saccharine or sort of like treacly sort of manner either. It's like, it feels very authentic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, pretty amazing cast. Oh, we didn't talk about, there was actually obviously young, early career performance by Barry Keoghan. Who's in Dunkirk, obviously plays, the sort of like the young man who is met with a small amount of misfortune thanks to Mr. Cillian or Cillian Murphy.
That's right.
He was only 24 when he made this film, and that was probably the biggest movies of his career to date. So, but again, like pretty incredible cast. I think, obviously more of an ensemble piece in Dunkirk than it is Darkest Hour.
Yes.
But I mean, pretty incredible. Now let's talk about the director, Joe Wright. So, if you got anything on Joe Wright, I've got a little bit if you want me to keep that.
I've just got, like, looking at his film history, it's interesting because, like, I know who Joe Wright is. I haven't seen a lot of his films. Like, I've seen Hannah, obviously, which is his big actioner that he did. But most of his stuff is kind of those kind of societal films, if you know what I mean, people and places and historical things, Atonement. Anna Karenina did the Coco Chanel film. But then you've got a film like Hannah right in the middle of it, which is just sticks out a little bit, you know what I mean? But yeah, not, solid English director, basically.
Yeah, like, sort of good, not great, right? But he achieved greatness with this film.
Absolutely.
Right? And I mean, I don't get me wrong, I loved Hannah. And that's got our boy Eric Banner in it, right?
That's right.
But I mean, really like solid, if not spectacular, right? So he's, really, and you wouldn't call him just like a workman sort of director or otherwise, because he's got moments of brilliance which workman directors don't necessarily have.
Yes.
And he certainly produced, I think, some really interesting films and things for us to sort of like chew on and so on and so forth. But for me, at least, this is certainly the peak of his career.
I would agree. This is probably the strongest and biggest thing he's done. So, but yeah, as you said, no, he's not just a working director. He's a solid British film director. So, no, very good.
So, let's maybe sort of like talk about, either, some of your favourite shots or favourite scenes. I mean, you've just mentioned the one in Darkest Hour. I think I've just mentioned mine, like where obviously, Churchill's in the subway and he's, soliciting, really gauging, testing the temperature of the British public, and is he making the right decision? And so on and so forth, because the stakes are enormous. It's literally life or death.
If you think of actually going back, your favourite scene comes after my favourite scene, because he has that conversation with the king who says, I will back you when you make this decision to, as a nation, go to war and protect ourselves.
Yep.
And then gets up the next day with that new verve and vigour to go, right, I've got my job, I've got to go and do this, and jumps on the underground at that point to do that. So there's a linkage there, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And look, I will say that the other favourite scene of mine is probably the introduction of Churchill, right?
Yeah.
So he's in that really sort of like dark bedroom, right? Smoking a cigar, the drapes are drawn, and then he gets served, I think, one of the most elite breakfasts I think I've ever seen, right? Where he's getting, sort of a really generous, scotch and soda. He's getting a glass of white wine. He's getting like 3 or 4 pieces of toast. He's getting butter. Maybe he's got some marmalade or otherwise on the side. He's getting an egg. He's getting some bacon. He's getting a sausage. There's something actually kind of like in the bottom left-hand screen that I couldn't see because I was actually sort of like streaming it off my laptop at the time versus seeing it in full HD. So I don't know if there's like some beans there or otherwise.
Yeah.
And you know what, Jeff? And there he is in bed, like smoking a nice cigar as well. And I said, you know what, Jeff? That's why the tiny island of England, was an absolute sort of like world dominator and sort of like leader and conquered half the world. Like they knew how to live, right? And you see that. And I know that for him it was all about his routine and otherwise, but I thought, that's why for a period of history, you were the greatest nation in the world.
Yeah.
It's like
exactly
moments like that.
Yes,
like that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
it's just incredible. But the other scene that I love in Darkest Hour, I mean, like there's actually so many good things. I think they use silhouettes and playing with their shadows and lights really well. I think they do a lot of really, really nice aerial shots, but the very last shot of the movie where Winston Churchill or Gary Oldman is walking towards camera, everyone's throwing papers up in the background, there's strong overhead light, providing a backlight and silhouetting, Oldman as Churchill. I mean, wow.
It's a fantastic ending. Really good way to end it.
Yeah. So, that's really probably the things that stand out for me with Darkest Hour. I mean, doing the same for Dunkirk, it's like, how much time do you have? Where do you stop?
Well, practically, because there's all these little sequences. I mean, look, from a tension point of view, and again, it's totally designed to be like that. It's the boys in the boat, the little Danish boat that's been beached, where they're all just sitting there quietly, and then the Germans start using it as target practice. Do you know what I mean? The tension in that scene as that goes through, right? And then suddenly realising that the guy who's been travelling with the young bloke and Harry Styles has been travelling with the whole time is actually French. He's not an English soldier because he has barely spoken throughout the entire film, right? Probably says 10 words in English in the entire way through. Just the tension in there was really, really tight. So, but you're right. You could just literally pick the whole film as a favourite piece in Dunkirk because all these scenes play out so well.
So look, I'm going to give you two scenes that I absolutely love. One is literally the opening of the film. It's towards the start of the film where you have the 6 infantrymen, as I said, wandering down a deserted street or the deserted streets of Dunkirk. Nazi propaganda is like raining from the sky.
Yep.
The water's turned off and then it text scroll of what is happening and what to expect. It's like, I'm in. Like, bam, you've got my attention. I'm not, and I don't give up my attention until the movie's over. And, very taut, roughly 106 minutes sort of film, just incredible. The other shot that I absolutely love is when Tom Hardy's plane has run out of fuel. Camera's tracking the plane, the Dunkirk beach and the apartments are seen in the background. That is absolutely beautiful. Like, you almost sort of take a photo of that, it's, almost, put that up on a wall somewhere. That's art, right?
Yeah. And again, you know what? That is an actual old proper Spitfire that is Dunkirk Beach. So it's not a location, it's actually Dunkirk Beach. It's the first time a plane had landed on Dunkirk Beach since 1940.
Is that right?
Never been done before then, right? So they actually got permission to do it. They put the plane on the beach. Now the problem they faced was they did it, they shot the scene, they got the beautiful, and you're right, it's amazing. But then the plane got bogged and they had to madly get it out before the tide came in because obviously that's an antique proper heritage plane and it would have just been eaten by the sea. Right. So it turned into a bit of a slight production problem where it's like, quick everyone, every man in his dock suddenly had to pick up a spade and dig the damn thing out, You know
what I think is so interesting about, Dunkirk is that it's almost like an experimental film, right? I mean, because you've got this, like, obviously it's this, sort of pulsating kind of like survival thriller told from, the ground, the sea, and the air. But it's almost dialogue free, right? It's very scant dialogue. Apparently the original script was like 76 pages, right?
Yeah. And
it's just immersing the viewers in the chaos and desperation of evacuation. I mean, it's really quite incredible that, this, became the film that became. And like, I think you literally need someone with the filmmaking skill and the toolkit that Christopher Nolan has to be able to pull something like this off. Like, I've got to be honest, like, there's only a handful of directors who could do what Nolan did with Dunkirk, I think, I mentioned Spielberg, before. I think I'd certainly put him up there. But it's actually quite incredible when you think about, the way that this film came to life and the sound device that they use to really signify that relentless pressure and the constant, almost kind of like increasing of pressure. It's a very particular musical sound kind of like technique. It's almost like an audio sleight of hand. I mean, just to be able to conceive of that and then be able to execute that as effortlessly without it feeling gimmicky or otherwise, and just naturally fold it in and enhance it and actually becoming a character within itself. I said, like, this is like, some of, again, sort of more of that experimental filmmaking at its best, but done at scale, commercially, with $100 million budget.
And that, I guess, you're right. And that's the thing. It's like, the fact that both of these films, this one in particular, this film took $500 million at the box office, right? It's a World War II action film, and it took $500 million. It just shows that there are still audiences and people want to see these kind of things, right? They don't all have to be, don't get me wrong, love my superhero films, but they don't all have to be superheroes or franchises. You can do films like this at scale, add budget, use your devices, give an element of experimental or freedom to the director, and look what you get.
And I think it's a great point, Jeff. And this is almost like the last, or one of the last kind of like periods of time that you're actually going to have participants of World War II actually still alive to be able to see that. I mean, you probably saw in the research as well, and I know I'm sort of like jumping ahead here a bit, but there was roughly 30 Dunkirk survivors. All of them were in their mid-90s. They actually attended the premiere in London.
Yeah.
Right? And they were even asked about the movie and if it captured or portrayed the events, accurately, and they were saying, like, you know what, absolutely, really captured the moment, but the sound was probably louder than the actual box.
Yeah, I love that fact. I love the fact. Apparently, because Branagh apparently told that to Nolan, who just started giggling because he's like, oh, well, okay. So it was louder in the cinema than it was being on the beach. So, but you know what? I'm sure the tension on the beach was just as much as the tension in the film for those guys. So
and it is. I mean, it is pretty incredible around like the contrast kind of like within the film of Dunkirk, where you've got that sheer desperation to escape and get to safety by pretty much anyone who's on the sand, I think is sort of a term that they use. Contrasting against a father and son and the deckhand who are going to war or into the belly of the beast willingly. Right? Both serving the nation, both coming at it, say, from different perspectives. So, and just that despair and destruction, yet, the undeniable desire to live and survive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it is a phenomenal film, as is Darkest Hour. I mean, really, really hard to sort of split them. So, again, we've touched a little bit on, why these films potentially came out roughly at the same time and otherwise. Maybe let's dig into, other trivia, be it about making the film or fun facts or otherwise. What did you come up with, Jeff?
Well, all right. So in terms of logistically, the big Dunkirk was the one that faced the most logistical challenges because obviously Nolan likes to shoot in IMAX, a lot of his films. But the problem was IMAX cameras weren't designed to fit on World War II Spitfires or on boats. So logistically, that became quite a bit of a challenge, but they overcame that. And apparently they also built the mole, the mole that they're all standing on wasn't there anymore. They actually built that at Dunkirk.
Oh, that's incredible.
Because it had either gone or been destroyed or whatever over the years, and so they actually rebuilt it, which is interesting to know. So, we already talked about the fact that Nolan wanted inexperienced kids, but the other thing I found, just the last one for Dunkirk really, was that 12 of the actual ships that physically sailed in World War II to Dunkirk were still in use when he made the film and were actually part of the flotilla.
Of Operation Dunkirk.
Were actually in the film. So they're actually credited they're in the credits.
That's incredible.
12 of those little boats were actually used. So now, again, I don't know if you know this. Do you know when, going to Darkest Hour, when Churchill speaks to the US president? Do you know who the US president is?
Oh, The Voice?
Yes.
I did read it somewhere. You're going to have to remind me.
David Strathairn.
That's awesome. I love Strathairn.
So he was the voice of the president at the time. And the big one, which obviously you could find a lot of places. So Oldman went through 200 hours of makeup during the film production. Took 200 hours. He smoked 12 cigars a day during filming. They spent about £30,000 of the budget was just on cigars.
On cigars? That's amazing.
He actually developed nicotine poisoning from smoking that many cigars and ended up they had a break during filming the year before over Christmas. He had to go and have a full colonoscopy and medical just to ensure that the dude wasn't killing it. Well, I mean, he had nicotine poisoning,
right.
But he had to go through a full medical during their Christmas break to just check that he was literally not dying while doing this film. Yeah. Interestingly, he spent a year studying Churchill, going through old footage, old stuff, listening to him constantly to lock him down. And My last fact that I kind of found was, so Oldman insisted that very famous prosthetics guy, Kazuhiro Tsuji, he insisted that he did the prosthetics for the film. He was actually ready to walk away if he didn't have Kazuhiro as the prosthetics guy, if the production didn't hire him, because he knew his work and he insisted that he was the one who did the Churchill makeup. So the production hired him.
Other than he was a highly regarded, renowned sort of special effects artist in Hollywood for, I think, two plus decades. I've got to be honest, until I sort of did the research, he hadn't actually kind of crossed my consciousness.
Not someone I'd heard of either previously.
To have Gary Oldman know that this is, intuitively, I think it would have known that this is his shot at getting that little gold statue.
Yeah.
And he said, yep, that's my guy. Yeah, I mean that speaks volumes. So
yeah,
I think some great things there. Look, I mean, I've only got a couple of things to add to that, to be honest, Jeff. Apparently, John Hurt was actually set to portray Neville Chamberlain, right? Which would have been amazing.
Oh, that would have been phenomenal,
right?
Yeah.
And as a really sad coincidence, he was actually ill with cancer, and of course, Chamberlain was dying of cancer sort of back in the 40s, and as he's sort of portrayed in the film, because Hurt was so ill, he never made it to a reading, and he never got to film a scene. The movie was actually dedicated to him, though.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And it would have been his final cinematic project. So that's really sad.
It is sad. But can you imagine having John Hurt as Neville Chamberlain? Because the gravitas that man brings anyway, as the leader of the party in those scenes, how, not that the guy, and again, I don't know his name, who didn't do a decent enough job, but if you'd have had John Hurt there, that disparity between the two of them from a power struggle, I think might have been a bit more, because we all know who John Hurt is, you would have felt it a bit more, if that makes sense. Not that, again, I'm trying not to denigrate the man who played Neville Chamberlain, but...
Oh, no, of course, but, I mean, like, you go from a good actor to a great actor.
Yeah.
Right? And that's no slight on anyone. It's like there's good athletes and there's great athletes.
Yes. Yeah.
Some things simply are, right? But I think that's a case of that. So, yeah, look, I mean, I had a couple of things about sort of like the makeup. Apparently Oldman spent over 200 plus hours, in the makeup chair, like over the course of the shoot, which is, some achievement.
That's huge.
Now, one of my favourite quotes in the film, and it's said by Viscount Halifax. He's saying that, Winston Churchill mobilised the English language and sent it into battle.
What just happened? Immobilised the English language and sent it into battle.
Which is an incredible quote, right? Just amazing. Now, apparently, the quote actually originated with the American news reporter Edward R. Morrow, who used it in 1954, and it was again used by former President John F. Kennedy in 1963 on the occasion of Churchill being given honorary US citizenship. So, how about that?
Oh, so they picked it up from that time period and put it back in this time period. Interesting.
Yeah, but again, like I was so fascinated to like revisit Churchill. Because, spent a small amount of time, and it was only a small amount of time sort of studying him as you do around sort of what World War II back in high school. But, he started off as, like a, sort of war reporter, a foreign correspondent, and, then was actually in the army, and, he would have been seen as a genius if he had have pulled off what he was hoping to pull off in Gallipoli.
Yes.
Instead, he was seen really as an abject sort of failure. And I think to do, as a show of remorse and otherwise, he served on the front line, right? To try and restore his, career, and certainly a man who walked the talk, and he was, quite an incredible, character. I mean, if you think about the way they kind of like set him up as a flip-flopping sort of like politician, really going from one side to the other, but then he made great strides for the Labour and the Union movement in the United Kingdom, bit of a mixed record when it came to, sort of a military strategy, had gone very early on, sort of on Hitler, and was pretty, kind of consistent with that. And then he was the leader they needed in wartime, right?
Yeah.
It was really interesting though, like the war ended, they kicked him out.
Yeah.
They needed to turn the page and, just have a different voice and have a different perspective. But then he got back in again about, 3 or 4 years later and served another term. So what an incredible person in history, and, highly quotable lines and otherwise. But
yes.
I think I'm almost at the end of the research, but going back to Dunkirk, so I always love it when a film, Jeff, has a crazy working title. And this, apparently Dunkirk's obviously shot mostly in France. But it had the working title, Bodega Bay, right? Reportedly named after the Californian village where Alfred Hitchcock filmed The Birds in 1963. So how about that?
So excellent.
So Now, also the other fun fact is that they talk about how it would have been an absolute decimation of the British military had they not got those boys off the sand.
Yes.
But, apparently and sure, it would have been an absolute body blow or a loss of a limb or otherwise, but apparently the British military was just shy of 3 million strong in 1940, and 330,000 were rescued from Dunkirk, right? Of that 330,000, about 20% were French troops, and, Britain needed to train and arm new recruits at the time of Dunkirk, but, it's not like they were, bereft of a huge force that they could sort of still go to war with. And the Royal Navy actually still controlled the Channel. So Germany was actually not ready to invade England at that point.
Yeah.
The only other interesting thing about this is that Winston Churchill has only been British Prime Minister for 16 days before the evacuation of Dunkirk began.
Really? Well, that was the interesting thing I found is that, it's when you go into looking at what people have gripes and things about, the main thing is this is a film. All films take some leeway with historical facts, right? Is that the people who don't like this film is because it's historically inaccurate, because it took that timeline that he did have and jammed it into the space of 5 days, right? And that's the big thing. So, some of these things happened over the space of a couple of months as compared to, not Dunkirk, but some of the activities that happened during the things, and some of the parliamentarian things happened over the space of a few months. So
actually, I do have two final things actually on Darkest Hour. You just remind me just on the time frame. So Darkest Hour pretty much takes place over the course of a month in May 1940, right? The first 40 days of Winston Churchill's wartime tenure as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And both films were obviously Best Picture nominees. The 2018 would have been Academy Awards. Now, I mentioned, the political climate at the time and potentially why these films kind of, came out with Brexit happening, the rise of, Trumpian politics in the United States and otherwise. And Joe Wright, who is British, he actually said that the movie is directly relevant to his country's political turmoil under the leadership of, to the US's country's political turmoil under the leadership of the maverick, business billionaire Donald Trump, and the concern that this was causing for the rest of the world. He said, there's a big question in America at the moment. What does good leadership look like, right? Churchill resisted when it mattered most. Mm. And so, there was certainly, whether it was explicit, implicit, or otherwise, there's certainly kind of a mirror thematically being sort of held up to what was happening from a global political and sort of cultural sort of moment in time. Yeah. So, but I mean, what a watch, back to back. I think, Jeff, two amazing films.
Two amazing films.
So, gun to your head, which one had the greater impact? Which one had the greater cast? Which one had the better legacy?
For me, from a historical perspective, it's Darkest Hour. However, from a personal perspective, in terms of about the individual and the stories around it, it's Dunkirk.
I agree.
I realise that's sitting on the fence.
No, but look, I'm the same. I've got to admit, my estimation of Darkest Hour on second watch just went up probably tenfold, right? And I think it is truly an incredible film. I think it's the best film that Joe Wright has made, right? It was lightning in a bottle moment. Again, absolutely incredible viewer performance by Gary Oldman. Worthy, Oscar winner, just incredible. But Dunkirk, that's something else. It's kind of limitless, the amount of tricks Nolan actually has in his trick bag, and the fact that he can make something so compelling without, making this, about, excessive, patriotism or, glorifying sort of war or, getting overly political or caught up in anything.
Yes.
He just made an incredible action film. Yeah, right? And
I agree.
It almost made, not to say it's ever going to be irrelevant, it's not, but almost made that, that World War II, 70 years post the fact, for a younger generation, right, relevant again.
Which, by the amount of the box office it took, obviously the younger generation saw it. So
100%.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, thanks again.
Anytime.
Probably concludes the sort of the analysis of this pod. What have we got coming up next?
Well, mate, we're going to go on a massive tangent and we're going to have a slasher showdown, I think. We're going to look at bunch of monsters fighting each other. Freddy versus Jason, Aliens versus Predator. We're going to go completely different. I look forward to attacking those two monsters by themselves.
Well, I'm looking forward to the main course after the amuse-bouche that was this episode's period, Jeff. So until next time.
Thank you, mate. See you then.